Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Metagame Mastery. We are doing a live deck building event for Mageta the Lion Commander EDH. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. So without further ado, big time, go time, let's go. First up, let's take a look at our commander. He is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white, legendary, human spell shaper. He has 3/3 power toughness, and he has the ability you can pay 2 colorless, white, discard 2 cards from your hand, and destroy all creatures except for Mageta the Lion. Those creatures cannot be regenerated. And he also has one of the coolest flavor texts of all time. It is, in the jungle of war, there's always a lion. Beastie. So, right off the bat, what are we looking at here? We've got a control commander. He is going to make it oppressive. He's just going to be able to board wipe consistently over and over and over again, and give you the advantage of having a creature already on the board. What are we going to do with him? Well, that's a good question. First thing we're going to do with him is we're going to lock down the board. Second thing we're going to do with him is we're going to actually use his ability to go ahead and fill our graveyard, because white has a very underappreciated reanimation potential. So we're going to take advantage of that. And then lastly, we're going to flood the board with indestructible creatures that dodge removal, so that we can continue developing our board, and in the process pull further and further ahead of our opponents. And we have a return viewer. Hello, Aaron Retz. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so the first thing you're going to notice is that discarding 2 cards every single turn cycle is, of course, going to put us at card disadvantage. So we're going to be digging deep, and we're going to be looking for ways to to draw additional cards every single turn. So let's go over some of the all-stars for this deck. Mono white is one of the most difficult color combinations to play in Commander, because you have access to so little mana ramp, and because you have access to so little card draw. So what we're going to do is we're really going to zero in on getting the best mana ramp and card draw possible. Well, thank you. I work very hard to get new equipment and learn new new software. So I appreciate you mentioning the new setup. It's something that we're still developing, but it's only going to get better. All right. So first up, we have Knight of the White Orchid. It's 2 white mana for a 2/2 human knight with first strike, and when Knight of the White Orchid enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a plains and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So many of white's mana ramp cards are contingent on your opponents having more lands than you, but that's okay, because as long in a multiplayer format like this, it's as long as your opponent goes ahead, and odds are they're going to be going first, as long as they're hitting their land drops, someone's going to have more lands than you. And therefore, it becomes very, very easy for you to get the trigger off of this guy. Oh, well, thank you. That's one of the reasons why we invested in more equipment here, getting the extra cameras so that we can, A, you can interact with me on a more personal level, and B, get that additional card clarity. Okay, so this is going to be the first card in our mana ramp package. Now, if you're not familiar with it, there is a certain philosophy when it comes to EDH. You want to make sure that there are certain card effects represented in all of your decks. You want to make sure that you have about 10 cards of mana ramp. You want to have somewhere around 38 to 40 lands. You want to have about 10 cards of removal, approximately 5 board wipe, 5 single target removal. And then you want to have about 10 cards of card draw. That leaves you about 30 cards for you to build your main strategy around. So mono white is considered one of the most difficult color combinations to play because card draw and mana ramp don't really exist within the color pie. And on top of that, there have been very few exceptions over the years. So we're going to be zeroing in on those few exceptions and really good artifacts that we can use in place of white cards. Well, yeah, you got to be able to see the cards to know what we're talking about, Aaron Rhett. Okay, so, of course, the classic mana ramp card goes in basically every EDH deck. It's Sol Ring, 1 colorless mana artifact, tap to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. And as the professor would say, because Sol Ring, it's just that good a card, it has to go in every EDH deck. And the OG original best spot removal is Swords to Plowshares. 1 white mana, instant, exile target creature card. Its controller gains life equal to its power. So we're going to be focusing on exile removal because our commander is going to be destroying everything, which means anything indestructible is going to be kind of a pain in our butt. At the same time, we're going to be taking advantage of indestructibility so that we can continue building our board state. I'm going to call this a tribal indestructible deck. Another really good mana ramp spell for mono white is Pearl Medallion. 2 CMC, 2 colorless artifact. Whenever white spells you control cast 1 colorless less to cast, reducing the cost on all of our spells. And we have a question from chat, so I'm just going to take a quick look at that. So we've got viewer taking notes, and the basic formula for building a EDH deck is you want to have somewhere between 38 and 40 lands. Varies based on your mana curve, but a good general rule is 38 and 40 lands. You want to have approximately 10 mana ramp cards to get you that additional tempo advantage. You want to have approximately 10 removal cards. Typically, you're going to go for a 5-5 split, 5 spot removal, just getting rid of something that pesters you, and then 5 board wipes. And then you're going to want to have 10 card draw cards, because there's nothing worse than sitting at an EDH game, everybody has a full grip, and then you're just top decking, hoping for an answer. And then lastly, you'll have about 30 cards for you to build your main strategy around. And of course, I go over this every single one of our live streams when we build these decks. Next up is a supreme value card in all mono white decks. It's Serra Ascendant. 1 white mana for a 1/1 human monk with lifelink. As long as you have 30 or more life, Serra Ascendant gets +5/+5 and has flying. So this card was relatively mediocre in regular competitive formats of Magic, but in EDH, you start with 40 life. So if you drop this thing on first turn, you're paying 1 white mana for a 6/6 flying lifelink. Boom! This is the value machine. And for those in chat, you're very welcome. If you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt anytime. That's what I'm here for. And going back to removal, we have Path to Exile. It's 1 white mana instant, exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle their library. And let's see. Yes, lifelink is da bomb. And we're going to be running a pretty big Planeswalker suite in this deck because while we're blowing up the board, that makes it more difficult, A, for our opponents to deal with our Planeswalkers, and B, it helps us develop board presence that isn't affected by our board wipes. So, for example, going back to that indestructible theme, we have Elspeth. 4 CMC, 2 colorless, 2 white, for Planeswalker that starts with 4 loyalty, has a +1 ability, put a 1/1 white soldier token onto the battlefield, +1 ability, target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. And then her ultimate is supremely awesome in this deck. It's -8. You gain an emblem with artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. Boom! That makes it so that when we blow up the board repeatedly, again and again and again, none of our stuff will be affected, no matter what it is. Freaking awesome. And her other 2 abilities are actually really helpful, particularly the middle one. Allows us to go with a little bit of a Voltron sub-theme, because while we're wiping out our opponent's board, we're going to make it so that they have no blockers, and we can just start cranking out that commander damage. We want to go ahead and take advantage of being the only person that has creatures on the board. Really, really good card. Really good card for this deck. We're also going to be playing Tribal Gideon, because this guy does exactly what we need. He's 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white, for a Planeswalker that starts with 4 loyalty, and you could give him a +1 until end of turn. Gideon, ally of Zendikar, becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally creature with indestructible, and it's still a Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. That seems kind of pointless, considering he's indestructible and can't die from damage, but whatever. You know, icing on the cake. You can also do a 0 ability to put a 2/2 white knight's ally creature token onto the battlefield. And his ultimate, which is perfectly attainable, is -4. You get an emblem that says creatures you control get +1/+1. Pumping up our Mageta, pumping up Gideon, pumping up anything else we fill the board with. So he's an Anthem, he's an indestructible creature, he can technically protect himself by throwing out blockers, but just like Elspeth, that's going to be our least used mode. Otherwise, this does everything we want, because with him being indestructible, he can't be killed by us setting off our Mageta the Lion ability. And I mean, that's what this deck's really going to be about. It's going to be the power of having a Wrath of God available to us every turn at instant speed that cannot be countered as long as Mageta's on the board. That's going to let us absolutely regulate the game. Next up, we have a Reanimation target, Iona, Shield of Emeria. 9 CMC, 6 colorless, white for a 7/7 legendary angel with flying. As Iona, Shield of Emeria enters the battlefield, choose a color. Your opponents can't cast spells of the chosen color. Boom! Oh, you're playing mono red. Oh, you're playing everyone at the table is playing a green deck. Oh, those blue spells tend to be pretty good. Forget it. It's done. They're gone. This card is a great way for you to lose friends. So it must be good. We're going to put the reanimation targets down here. And then Avacyn actually works both for our tribal indestructible strategy, and at the same time is a great reanimation target. She is 8 CMC, 5 colorless, white, 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 lit for an 8/8 legendary angel with flying and vigilance, and she and all permanents you control are indestructible. Boom. There was never a more perfect card for our board wipe every turn strategy than Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Now, these cards are super expensive, and we're going to struggle with mana ramp in this strategy. So that leads us into our reanimation strategy, and we're going to have to dig those cards out because I've got about 100 cards here that I'm considering putting in the deck. Here's one that is kind of just up for consideration. You might want to, it might be something you want to do at home. It's Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, 10 colorless mana for a 10/10 legendary Eldrazi. When you cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, exile up to 2 target permanents. He has Indestructible, and whenever he attacks, the defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. Ouch. I like him because he's indestructible. I like him because, unlike many of the other Eldrazi legends, when he goes to your graveyard, he's not shuffled back in to your deck, which makes him a good reanimation target as well. That said, he kind of feels like more of a win more card, but I'm going to put him in the running just because that's, you drop this guy, you're probably going to win the game. Also, just for straight value purposes, Wormcoil Engine is one of the best artifact creatures ever made. He's 6 colorless mana for a 6/6 artifact creature worm with Death Touch and Lifelink. Whenever he dies, put a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Lifelink onto the battlefield. So this guy is not indestructible, but he gets you the additional value of being able to repopulate your board when you blow him up. And he's also a good reanimation target, being able to do that, repeat that process over and over and over again. So he's really in the running more for the sheer value of it all. And yeah, I'm going over some really good cards here. Now, when it comes to our creature base, not everything is going to have indestructible, just like Wormcoil Engine, just like Serra Ascendant. So that's why cards like Hammer of Nazan are going to be good inclusions in this deck. It's 4 colorless mana for a legendary artifact equipment. Equip costs 4. Whenever Hammer of Nazan or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and gains Indestructible. So this is a way for us to give Indestructible to anything that we might have on the board. And it eliminates the equip costs on all our equipment the first time we play it. Of course, Mageta is going to draw a lot of hate, so let's run cards to protect him, like Swiftfoot Boots. It's 2 colorless mana for artifact equipment. Equip cost 1. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Hexproof, of course, makes it so that your opponents can't target him with spot removal, making him that much more difficult to get rid of and locking down your absolute dominant board state. And the original protection equipment, Lightning Greaves, 2 colorless for an artifact equipment with equip cost 0. That's value. Equipped creature has haste and shroud, which is a little bit more oppressive because I won't be able to target him with Voltron effects. That's okay because we get to guarantee he stays on the board. Worth it. Sticking with that Voltron strategy, we have Luxodon Warhammer. This is just a straight value card. It's definitely on the maybe list. It's 3 colorless mana, artifact equipment, 3 to equip. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has trample and lifelink. So if we're going to start crashing in for damage, this is a great card to pump up that damage. Along those same lines, we have Godsend. It's 3 CMC, 1 colorless, white, legendary artifact equipment, equip cost of 3, equipped creature gets +3/+3. Whenever a equipped creature blocks or is blocked by 1 or more creatures, you may exile one of those creatures. Opponents cannot cast cards with the same name as cards exiled with Godsend. So we're going back to that exile removal. Mageta is going to do a ton of destroy creature removal for us. But if there's something indestructible that can't get away that we can't board wipe away, then this is a way for us to clear the board of blockers and continue smashing in. And it doubles the clock when it comes to, or halves the clock, I should say, when it comes to our commander damage. And yes, chat likes Luxodon Warhammer. Chat is right. Next up, we have Enlightened Tutor. It's 1 white mana, instant. Search your library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal that card, and shuffle your library, then put that card on top of it. So what this will do is it'll let us tutor up any mana ramp spell that we might need, or mana ramp artifact, I should say. Any artifact or equipment or aura that will grant indestructible to our creatures, which really facilitates all of our strategies. It can even pull up some of our card draw cards, which we're going to get to in a little bit here. So it's very versatile. It's a very good budget tutor for the deck. Very efficient. Next up, we have the Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum. 4 colorless mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem. When Solemn Simulacrum enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and when Solemn Simulacrum dies, you may draw a card. So he's 4 mana, you get to ramp a land, and when you blow up the board, that's okay, because you get to draw a card for it. That's pretty solid. It does what we want, right? It actually is 2 birds with 1 stone. Love it. Going back to exile removal, we have Cast Out. This thing's tearing it up in Standard right now. You probably see it every week at your FNM. It's 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white enchantment that has flash. So you can play it as an instant. Very, very important, because this can break up combos. When Cast Out enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield. And it has a cycling cost of 1 white mana. So if for whatever reason you don't have the mana for it, you don't feel like you need it, you can just pay 1 white mana, pitch it, and maybe draw into some gas. Very good card. Goes back to us having to play exile removal Very solid choice. Next up, we have Grasp of Fate. It's 3 CMC, 1 colorless white enchantment. When Grasp of Fate enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. Okay, so this is a straight up value card. Like, you play this and you can exile one target for each opponent you have. That's typically a 3-for-1. If you're playing a larger pod, for whatever reason, you're playing a big game, this just continues to get better and better and better. And it has the same CMC as Oblivion Ring. It's just straight up value in this format. Chat is challenging me to say Solemn Simulacrum 5 times fast. I'm tempted, but I think it would detract from what we're doing here. So I'm going to decline, maybe on the next live broadcast. We'll see. Open the Armory is sort of a newer classic. I really love this in the format, and it's super cheap to get a hold of one. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white sorcery. Search your library for an aura or an equipment, reveal it, and put it directly into your hand. Shuffle your library. So I love the versatility of this. I love that rather than taking up our next card draw like Enlightened Tutor does, we get to put it directly into our hand. It's just a straight up value card. Really can't argue with that. Stonehewer Giant is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white, for a 4/4 creature giant warrior with vigilance. You can pay 1 colorless and a white, tap him, search your library for an equipment, put it onto the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control, then shuffle your library. So what I love about this guy is he bypasses all costs of the equipment, both casting and equip. He can do it at instant speed, so all of your equipment becomes a combat trick, and he's a tutor on a stick. This guy is super versatile. That's why I love him, and that's why I'm very heavily considering running him in the deck, even though he doesn't fall within our, tribal indestructible theme. Next up, we have a reanimation target, Angel of Serenity. She is 7 CMC, 4 colorless, white, for a 5/6 angel with flying. When Angel of Serenity enters the battlefield, you may exile up to 3 other target creatures from the battlefield and or creature cards from the graveyard. When Angel of Serenity leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. So they don't even come back onto the battlefield. I think you noticed with the other cards that they come back onto the battlefield afterwards, allowing players to get the additional value from, say, enter the battlefield effects. Not this guy. It sends them back to their hands. They got to spend the mana to recast it, and that's straight value. Or you could even do this. You could cast this onto a board where your opponents have nothing out there, and you can just get 3 cards from your graveyard, allowing you to get card advantage off this if it should ever die. Chat's cracking me up today. We got a good crowd. Spell Shaper's Gift is 1 white mana, sorcery, search your library for an equipment card, reveal that card, and put it directly into your hand. No muss, no fuss. Shielded by Faith is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, white, enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has indestructible, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may attach Shielded by Faith to that creature. So it kind of leapfrogs around, which is really valuable in the fact that it's you have the ability to sort of move this to maybe higher value targets over time. I'm also going to include the white cycling lands, just for the fact that having the additional flexibility of, if we're getting flooded, being able to pitch the cards to draw into some gas, or if we're running low on mana and we really need the lands, it's still a land. Either way, if we're running low on mana, we have too much mana, it's straight value. So we've got Desert of the True. Of course, mana bases are super flexible. You can go ahead and adjust them based on your budget, but I mean, we're running mono white. It's going to be almost all plains anyways, right? Drifting Meadow. And lastly, Secluded Steppe. And there are a few other indestructible. Ooh, look at the glare off of that promo card. Okay. There are a few other indestructible equipments that grant it indestructible. This is a good example. Shield of Kaldra. It's 4 colorless mana, for a legendary artifact equipment with equip cost 4. Equipped equipment named Sword of Kaldra, Shield of Kaldra, and Helm of Kaldra are indestructible. An equipped creature gains indestructible. This and say Darksteel Plate, and there are probably a few others, are all good cards for this build. That watermark was just intense, wasn't it? I like shiny cards. It's a vice. And this is a good value card. It's Hero's Blade, costs 2 colorless mana, artifact equipment, with equip cost 4. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Hero's Blade to it. So basically, you pay 2 mana and you get to double Mageta the Lion's power as soon as you play him. And that's the goal with this card. That cuts your opponent's clock in half when it comes to commander damage, and that's why I'm considering running it. We'll see. I really want to build up my board state outside of just a Voltron strategy. And more removal. We have Return to Dust. It's 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white instant. Exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast this during your turn, or your main phase, I should say, you may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment, getting you that 2-for-1, which is so important. And on top of it all, it's exile, which we need to really focus on in this particular strategy. Also, along those same lines, we have Journey to Nowhere. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white enchantment. When Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile target creature. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card from the battlefield or to the battlefield under its owner's control. Okay, so now we're going into a little bit more unconventional mana ramp. We have Dowsing Dagger. It's 2 CMC, artifact equipment with equip cost 2. When Dowsing Dagger enters the battlefield, return target opponent creates 2/0/2 green plant creature tokens with Defender. And equipped creature gets +2/+1. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may transform Dowsing Dagger. So we don't care that we're giving away those walls because we're just going to blow them up. And at the same time, we get that additional pump on Mageta the Lion. And then, boom, It becomes Lost Veil. It becomes a land card that taps for 3 mana of any 1 color to your mana pool. Pretty good. Pretty good mana ramp there. You typically have to be evasive, but since we're just going to blow up all the board anyways, I'm cool with it. We'll get this through pretty often. So I'm going to put that in the mana ramp pile. It is a little bit situational, so it's going to go in kind of the maybe pile, but we got to hit that magic number of 10. At least 10 mana ramp cards, at least 10 card draw cards, because Mageta the Lion is hungry for both. Next up, we have an alternative card. Quicksilver Amulet is 4 CMC artifacts. You can pay for, tap it. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is a great backup plan for our reanimation targets, allowing us to cheat them into play early without having to necessarily pitch them to our graveyard and have a reanimation spell in our hand to play them. Which reminds me, not shown here today is a very important card for this deck. It's Emiria Sky Ruin. It's a land card. It taps for a white mana, and when you have 8 or more planes, I believe, whenever you play a planes card, you could put a permanent card from your graveyard onto the battlefield, just allowing you to get that free reanimation every single turn off your land cards, and can't be countered, which is always so important. Another really underrated card in Commander is Unexpectedly Absent. It's X white instant. Put target non-land permanent in its owner's library just beneath the top X cards of that library. So you're looking at this and you're going, oh man, I gotta pay like 3, 4, 5, 6 mana to tuck that thing into the deck. No, you only ever play this for 2. Because worst case scenario, they're getting a dud draw. Best case scenario, you play this in response to, say, a fetch land or a tutor, when they're about to have to shuffle their deck anyways, smack that sucker on top, and it is gone. They won't be seeing that again for almost forever. It's a mean play, but at the same time, having the versatility of being able to target anything for only 2 mana is really, really good. Got some duplicates here. That happens sometimes. I'm just going to go ahead and remove them from the pile. And next up is sort of another category, vehicles. Vehicles are great because they're creatures when we need them, but at the same time, they stop being creatures when we don't, which means we can do the Mageta the Lion board wipe, and they're fine. They dodge sorcery speed removal. Love that. This is a perfect example. Cultivator's Caravan, 3 colorless mana for a 5/5 artifact vehicle with a crew cost of 3. You can also tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it's mana ramp and a creature. Now, mind you, it's only a creature when crew cost is, if you haven't been playing in a while, you could tap any number of creatures you control with total power 3 or more, or whatever the crew cost is. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature till end of turn. So it's a regular artifact most of the time, and then when I choose to, I can tap down my creatures to get a bigger creature out instead. Very powerful. Along those same lines, we have Sky Sovereign Council Flagship. 5 colorless mana for a legendary artifact vehicle. It's a 6/5 flying. Whenever Sky Sovereign Council Flagship enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. with a crew cost of 3. So kind of a colorless Inferno Titan. Mind you, it can't target players like Inferno Titan can, but it can hit their Planeswalkers, it can hit their creatures, just getting that additional removal so that you don't necessarily have to set off Mageta. Keep those cards in hand sometimes. And sort of the cheaper version is Ballista Charger. This is basically the same thing. It's 5 colorless mana for a 6/6 artifact vehicle. Whenever Ballista Charger attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Crew cost of 3. So get that additional ping in. It's got a lot of versatility there. And Fleet Wheel Cruiser is 4 colorless mana for a 5/3 artifact vehicle with trample and haste. When Fleet Wheel Cruiser enters the battlefield, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn and has only a crew cost of 2. So that's a solid pickup as well. Kind of getting you a ball lightning effect there. I'm going to see if I can adjust the lighting a little bit here. Give me 1 second. Okay. You guys let me know if that makes it better or worse. The sun's setting behind me, so our lighting situation's kind of in flux here. Bear with me. Yeah, vehicles are tearing it up in Standard right now. In fact, the new Challenger decks are coming out in April, and what that's going to do is they're going to basically give you ready-to-play Standard decks for fixed cost. One of them is going to be centered around vehicles. It's going to have Sky Sovereign Council Flagship. It's going to have Cultivator's Caravan. It's also going to come with a playset of 4 Heart of Kirin, which is widely considered the most powerful vehicle. And you get a whole playset of them built right into every single one of these Challenger decks. It's really exciting and will be a great addition to this deck because there are so many Planeswalkers we're running in it, but that's neither here nor there right now. Okay, so hopefully the additional lighting helps. Right now we have Odric, Lunarch Marshal. This is a newer version of a classic legend. It's 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. So basically, this guy shares keywords. And the same thing is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. That's a lot of keywords that he can share. The key one we're looking at is indestructible. Everything else is just icing on the cake. If I have one creature that has indestructible, all my creatures are indestructible until end of turn. Very good. Ixalan's Binding is... I'm playing a lot of similar cards, so I'm considering it, but this is definitely on the maybe pile. It's 4 CMC, 3 colorless enchantment. When Ixalan's Binding enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent or opponent controls until Ixalan's Binding leaves the battlefield. Your opponents can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. So it's kind of a Meddling Mage effect attached to an Oblivion Ring. kind of. I still don't know that it's good enough that I'd want to run it because I'm going to be running actual Oblivion Ring. It's 1 CMC cheaper. That kind of makes a difference. And Cast Out is just the same thing, only better because you can do it at instant speed, and it has cycling in case you don't need it for whatever reason. And our removal pile is getting pretty big over here, considering we have built-in removal right here on our commander. So let's start looking at some card draw effects. First up, we have the Art of Araska. It's a land card with Ascend. If you're not familiar with Ascend, it's brand new in the latest set, Rivals of Ixalan, and it is perfect for Commander. This is an awesome effect for Commander. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. You can tap this land to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. Doesn't even enter the battlefield tapped. But if you have the City's Blessing, you can pay 5 colorless mana, tap this land to draw a card. So that's uncounterable card draw for this deck that you can replenish your hand for Mageta the Lion's very costly discard 2 cards ability. That's really, really good. Really easy to hit Ascend in Commander. This is going to be an absolute slam dunk utility land for the deck. And here's one of our all-stars for our Tribal Indestructible strategy. It's Oketra the True. She's 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/6 legendary creature god with double strike and indestructible. Oketra the True can't attack or block unless you control at least 3 other creatures. You can pay 3 colorless and a white to create a 1/1 white warrior creature with vigilance. So her mana dump ability is really iffy because we're just going to be wiping the board. But the idea is as we build our board state more and more and more over time, she'll be more viable to attack and block with. And when we can, she's super value. I mean, we're talking about a 3/6 with double strike. So right there, she's dealing 6 damage when she attacks in. But for only 4 mana, and she's indestructible. So no matter what, she will always survive all of our Mageta the Lion board wipes. That's really powerful. Mageta the Lion loves God cards. Kind of another O-ring effect is Thopter Arrest. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, enchantment. When Thopter Arrest enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls until Thopter Arrest leaves the battlefield. I've got so much removal options here. I'm going to have to be pretty hard up to get some of these more obscure O-ring functional reprints. But here is actually, I think, our first Reanimation card. There's going to be more coming, but this is a doozy right here. We've got a Myria Shepherd, 7 CMC, 5 colorless white for a 4/4 angel with flying and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return target non-land permanent from your graveyard to your hand. If that land is a plains, you may return that permanent to the battlefield instead. Uncounterable. Every time you play a land, you get to cheated to play a creature card from your graveyard. That's going to be huge. Cheated to play your 9 CMC Iona Shield of Myria. Cheated to play your 8 CMC Avacyn Angel of Hope. Cheated to play your Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. And it doesn't break your tempo at all for the turn. This is possibly the best card out of Battle for Zendikar in this format. Love this card. Going to be great in this deck. Next up is Angelic Overseer. She is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white for a 5/3 angel with flying. And as long as you control a human, Angelic Overseer has hexproof and indestructible. That's important because Mageta the Lion has had his oracle text updated so that he's a human. So as long as your commander's in play, this is a 5/3 flying indestructible hexproof. This Angelic Overseer is one of Mageta's best friends, one of his favorite lieutenants. Does it all and is nigh impossible to kill with indestructible and hexproof. Can't be spot removal with exile effects, so only board wipes that bounce the entire board or exile the entire board can kill her. Nothing else. Very, very good. And of course, we've got the OG Oblivion Ring. 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white enchantment. When Oblivion Ring enters the battlefield, remove another target non-land permanent from the game. When Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield, return that removed card to play under its owner's control. So, classic, versatile, just that enchantment's bothering me, that planeswalker's bothering me, that artifact's bothering me, that creature's bothering me. I don't know what the problem might be, but it's exiled until further notice. And then you put the onus on them to find enchantment removal in order to get it back. Very strong card. Chat seems to be really in love with Emiria Shepherd, and rightfully so. It's so good, especially in this format. You combo it with like fetch lands, it gets really nuts. All right, Core Cartographer is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white for a 2/2 Core Scout, and when Core Cartographer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Straight up mana ramp. It's not even situational, so there's no downside to it. It's definitely worth an inclusion in this deck. Now, Glory is a neat tech card for this deck because it's 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white for a 3/3 flying incarnation. And you can pay 2 colorless and a white. Creatures you control gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn, but you can only play this ability while it's in your graveyard. So this is a card you actually want to discard to Mageta the Lion's ability, or you want to put it in play, get some value out of it, and then kill it with Mageta the Lion, so that you can every single time one of your creatures is targeted or is potentially going to die to damage, whatever the case may be, you can just pay that 3 mana and negate it. That's really powerful. We got another shiny here, folks. Sorry. It's a promo reprint of Banishing Light, which is the functional reprint of Oblivion Ring. 3 CMC enchantment, 1 or 2 colorless and a white. When Banishing Light enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. We'll get that out of there because it's going to blind our viewers again. I do like my shiny cards. Here's another new card from Rivals of Ixalan, that's just going to be right at home in here. It's 8 CMC, 6 colorless, white for a 4/8 legendary Elder Dinosaur with all of the keywords. Let's go through this. It has flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and the most important of all, indestructible. So this thing attacks, it blocks, it does 8 damage thanks to the double strike, and it survives all of our board wipes. Love it. This is going to be right at home in this deck. Yes, I love the new dinosaurs. Chat loves the new dinosaurs. I love the new dinosaurs. Frontline Medic is just another way we can get indestructible in this deck. It's a little bit situational, so we're calling it a maybe card. It's 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a white for a 3/3 human cleric with Battalion. Whenever Frontline Medic and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control are indestructible this turn. You can also sacrifice Frontline Medic, counter target spell with X and its mana cost unless its controller pays 3 colorless mana. I run Frontline Medic and some other decks. I've never used its sacrifice ability. It's just another way for us to get Mageta attacking, Frontline Medic attacking, and maybe one other thing, and give everything indestructible this turn so that we can just start board wiping. We're going to call it a maybe. But I really love this card for the deck because this basically eliminates all of our card draw concerns. It's Gariper Ori. It's 4 CMC artifact. Each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns, so we get that mana ramp. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So go ahead, pitch your entire hand. You're just going to draw 3 cards at the start of your turn and then draw another card on your draw step. You should always have 4 cards in your hand while this thing is on the battlefield. That's really good for every single turn cycle. That's a lot of card draw, especially in a slice of the color pie where card draw is so difficult to come by. This is going to be our best card draw card. Also on the maybe board, possibly my favorite hate bear, even Mind Sensor. 3 CMC, 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 bird wizard with flash, so you can play it as an instant, very important, and flying. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. Love playing this in response to tutors, just to really force a whiff. The problem with even Mind Sensor in this deck, even Mind Sensor is the great leveler because we're going to have so little card draw, so little access to tutors in this deck. Blue and black decks are going to have way more available to them. Even Mind Sensor negates a lot of that. Problem is, I'm going to be blowing up even Mind Sensor whenever I use my Mageta ability. So I love playing even Mind Sensor, especially when someone does a fetch land. They sacrifice their land to search their deck for the exact land that they want, and then you just go ahead and go, boop. You only get 4, yeah. Or search the top 4, that's rough. But as great as that is in control decks, I'm just not sure it's worth the investment to only do that once. Chat loves even Mind Sensor. You're a bird, Harry. Oh, that's good. So we'll put that in the maybe pile. Oh, but now we get back to our reanimation strategy. And one of the best reanimation cards, just in existence, let alone in white, but one of the best reanimation cards is Rhea Dawnbringer. She's 9 CMC, 6 colorless, white, white, white for a 4/6 legendary angel with flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Every single turn, cheat something into play. That's straight value. She's a perfect example of why we're running these additional cards that grant indestructibility, because she wouldn't survive the board wipes on her own. But if we can make her indestructible, then we're going to get so much value off of her. It's just ridiculous. Just awesome and ridiculous. Oh, so come on. Speaking of card draw, the thing about Gariper Ori is that it affects everyone. So our opponents could be drawing 4 cards every turn if they're dumping their hand. Whereas Staff of Nin is a one-sided Howling Mine, with upside. 6 colorless mana artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw an extra card, and you can tap at any time to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So you get that versatility of that additional ping, sort of kill off their mana dorks, utility creatures, or just get that additional chip damage in every single turn. But most importantly, we need to draw at least 2 cards every single turn to set off our ability every single turn cycle. And that's our goal, is to just absolutely oppress the board, make it so that only we get creatures, only us. Yeah, I was playing way back, in reference to chat liking Rhea. I was playing way back when Rhea first came out in Invasion, and I was just instantly in love. It was just such a good card. That was a long time ago. I'm dating myself here. Old man. Old man on metagame mastery, but benefit from my wisdom. Manlands are another option. Here's an example. Gargoyle Castle is a land. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. You could pay 5. Tap it and sacrifice it to create a 3/4 colorless gargoyle artifact creature with flying. So anything that's a land that goes into anything that's a land that becomes a creature, especially if it becomes a creature temporarily, is a good possibility for this deck. Like Mishra's Factory is a good example, because it'll dodge the sorcery speed board wipes, like when we set this off on an opponent's turn. Okay. Then we have sort of some hidden tech here. Surveyor's Scope is 2 colorless mana artifact. Tap it, exile it, search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of players who control at least 2 more lands than you. Put those cards onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This is so good in mono white as a ramp spell, because it's so easy for players who are already hitting their land drops to just stay ahead of you on lands as it is, with the fact that, there are so many other players on the board in Commander. This is a multiplayer format. But on top of that, if you miss even 1 land drop, that's fine. You're going to get 2, 3 other lands without paying anything extra. It only costs 2 mana, no additional activation costs. That's really powerful. This is going to be really, really good mana ramp for our mono white strategy. You can't talk about white reanimation without talking about the Revelark combo, where you get infinite enter the battlefield triggers. And let me find the other piece of that combo here. Karmic Guide. Wow, all the way at the bottom of the stack. Okay, so let's go over the combo. Revelark is 5 CMC for a 4/3 creature elemental with flying. When Revelark leaves the battlefield, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It also has an evoke cost of 5 colorless and a white, which basically means you cast it and then it instantly dies when it hits the battlefield. Karmic Guide is a classic white reanimation spell. It's 5 CMC for 2/2 creature angel spirit with flying and protection from black, and Echo, which is when you play Karmic Guide, the turn after you play it, you have to pay the Echo cost during your upkeep or it dies. The Echo cost is 3 colorless, and a white. When Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So with Revelark and Karmic Guide, what you do is Revelark dies, you put Karmic Guide in play, Karmic Guide brings back Revelark. If they die again, you just repeat the process indefinitely. This is an interesting combo with Mageta the Lion, because what happens is you blow up the board, they go to the graveyard, the leaves the battlefield triggers, and then you just continuously run this cycle. Not quite as good as being straight indestructible, but really, really good in lots of combo decks. Okay, we're going back to some vehicles here. This is one I really like. It's Daredevil Dragster. It's 3 CMC for a 4/4 artifact vehicle, crew cost of 2, and at the end of combat, if Daredevil Dragster attacked or blocked this combat, put a velocity counter on it. Then if it has 2 or more velocity counters on it, sack it and draw 2 cards. So it boards up, it skips our, it bypasses a lot of our board wipe effects, but at the same time, once we get through using it, we can go ahead and sack it for two cards. That's really good card advantage on top of everything. Chat's talking about the ye old foil rocks. It's a really good card. I actually love that card. Next up, we have Renegade Freighter. This is just straight up utility. 3 colorless mana for a 4/3 artifact vehicle. Whenever Renegade Freighter attacks, it gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Crew cost of 2. So it's just a way for us to force through some extra damage, and it, once again, it avoids our board wipes. Okay. We're actually almost done with the card selection. Then after this, we will go through each individual category, keeping the best cards, and then we're going to check the mana curve to do our final narrowing. Once we get this down to 99 plus the general, I'm going to sleeve this up. I'm going to play test this, and then once I've had a chance to polish it a little bit, we'll be posting a deck tech on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out. It's preview week for Masters 25. We're doing a preview video tonight and every night all week, and we have other deck techs that I think you'll really enjoy, along with rerunning our previous live Twitch streams. So check those out, and if you like our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Next up, we have Aethersphere Harvester, probably the second best vehicle in the game. It's 3 CMC for a 3/5 artifact vehicle that has flying. When Aethersphere Harvester enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. You can pay an energy counter. Aethersphere Harvester gains lifelink until end of turn and has a crew cost of only 1. So a way for us to gain life, build our board state, just straight up evasive threat. And just like all vehicles, it dodges sorcery speed removal. Next up, we have Temio's Journal. Really underrated card because it's kind of mana intensive, but it's perfect for this type of build. It's 5 colorless mana for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Investigate means you get to put colorless clue artifacts token into the battlefield, and it has the ability pay 2 mana, sacrifice it to draw a card. You can also tap this, sacrifice 3 clues, search your library for any card, and put it into your hand and shuffle your library. But this card's really sweet because, once again, it's one-sided, additional card draw. Of course, you're going to have to pay 2 every time to draw that card. If for whatever reason you're staying on curve, you can't pay that 2, you build up some additional clues, that's okay. You could just sack them and go ahead and tutor up anything you need out of your deck. Straight up value. Really, really good, especially for mono white EDH builds. Really underplayed card. Next up, we have Coast Explorer, 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a white for a 2/2 Cat Scout. When a Coast Explorer enters the battlefield, search your library for up to X Planes cards, where X is the number of players who control more lands than you. Reveal those cards to, and then put them into your hand. Shuffle your library. Okay, so I had a little bit of brain fart there. Bear with me. This is a way, it doesn't really ramp you, but it ensures you're going to continue hitting your land drops for the next several turns. Really important, especially in this deck, because if you play this on turn 2, all of your other opponents have gone before you, so they probably have more lands than you. You can get those three planes cards. That'll be enough to ensure that you can drop your commander. Very, very important to curve out in this deck. Gideon's Intervention is something I always consider. I always consider Nevermore and Gideon's Intervention in my white decks because they're so powerful in Commander. Aaron Rhett says that they can sack all their clues to return to their natural state clueless. You're upstaging me here. All right, so Gideon's Intervention is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white enchantment. As Gideon's Intervention enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Your opponents can't cast spells with the chosen card name. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and permanents you control with from sources of the chosen name. You can choose. You can choose. All's forgiven, Aaron Rat. You can choose your opponent's commander, lock them out, or you can choose creature tokens and keep them from being able to attack you. Either way, this is a very powerful card in Commander. And next, we're getting into some of our card draw options. We have Jalum Tome. It's 3 CMC artifact. Pay 2 colorless and tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. Looting is good, so I heard. Seer Sundial, 4 CMC for an artifact with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 colorless mana. If you do, draw a card. Yes, it's mana intensive, but it's potential additional card draw every single turn. Not bad. And this vehicle was so good, it had to be banned in Standard. It's Smuggler's Copter, 2 colorless for a 3/3 artifact vehicle that has flying. Whenever Smuggler's Copter attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Crew cost of 1. Getting that additional card selection is so valuable, especially in decks where you're going to be struggling with card advantage, like mono whites. And here's Mageta's other best friend, Heliod, God of the Sun. 4 CMC for a 3 colorless and a white. You get a 5/6 legendary enchantment creature god. He has indestructible, and as long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature. Devotion is however many white mana symbols are in the cost of all your cards in play. So, for example, Mageta would get you 2 devotion to white. Heliod would be another one. So between the 2 of them, you would have at least 3 devotion to white. If you play anything else that has you know, 2 other white mana symbols, he becomes this 5/6 indestructible creature. Whether he is or not, though, other creatures you control have vigilance. You can also pay 2 colorless, white, put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. You won't use that last ability very often. Can come in handy in a pinch. But yeah, just getting that 5/6 additional indestructible creature on the board and giving Mageta vigilance so that he can attack in, get that commander damage in, and then activate his ability before blockers are declared is super, super powerful. We love vigilance in this deck. Yeah, bannings are contentious, especially in Standard, but Smuggler's Copter kind of took over the format, so it had to go. And Heliod is straight up value, without a doubt. Next up, we have Temple Bell. It's 3 CMC artifact, tap it, each player draws a card. Love this card in Commander because, yes, it's a symmetrical effect. You will be helping your opponent, but you control when this happens. You can make it so that you get to use the card before anyone else does, and you get tempo advantage out of it. Whereas other cards like Howling Mine, which is another one we're considering for the deck, makes it so that your opponents get all the value first, and then only then do you start getting the effect. So let's take a look at Howling Mine as a card draw option. I like this card because A, it's classic, but B, it's a cheap and effective way to ensure we get 2 cards in our hand to use Mageta's ability. It's 2 colorless artifacts at the beginning of each player's upkeep or draw step. If Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. So this ensures that you will draw 2 cards every single turn. The problem is all your opponents will draw 2 cards every single turn. That's okay in the fact that you're going to make it so that they can't play anything anyways. Like if they play it, it's just going to get blown up. That's the whole point of this. So you want to be able to just activate your instant speed Wrath of God every single turn consistently, which is why it's worth playing in this build. Speaking of vigilance, we have Brave the Sands. Just 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white enchantment. Creatures you control have vigilance. Each creature you control can block an additional creature in combat. So just straight value gives Mageta the Lion vigilance so that he can attack in, he doesn't tap, and then before blockers are declared, he can activate his ability, wiping away any potential blockers. Vigilance is practically unblockable in this strategy. Not to mention, with all our indestructible creatures, giving them vigilance makes it so that we have a great defensive wall. Not that we'll really need it because we're wiping out the board, but if someone's trying to sneak through something with haste. Speaking of haste, it is something you have to be concerned about, which is why this is an absolute no-brainer in the deck. It's Blind Obedience. 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white enchantment. It has Extort, which is nice. You could pay 1 white mana when you cast the spell to drain 1 life from each opponent and gain that much life. A little bit of extra value. But the important thing is artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. One of the great answers to Mageta the Lion is red players go, oh, I don't care. Like, so you're going to blow up my stuff. It has haste. I'm just going to continuously attack you with my haste creatures and continue damaging you. With Blind Obedience, you're haste proof. Your opponents play their creatures and they come into the battlefield tapped, so they can't even attack, whether they have haste or not. Wah, wah. It's also really good at shutting down combos in Goblin decks, Elf decks. We have an Azuri Renegade Leader deck tech coming up that's a great example of why you want to have your opponent's creatures come into the battlefield tapped. This is a really powerful card, depending on your meta. And we have Marshall's Anthem. 4 CMC for an enchantment, multi-kicker. Let's break down the cost. 2 colorless, white, white. And it has multi-kicker, 1 colorless, and a white. You may pay an additional 1 colorless and a white any number of times as you cast the spell. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And when it enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times that Marshall's Anthem was kicked. So it's a reanimation spell and an anthem. Not bad. Yeah, Blind Obedience is powerful hate card. Powerful. Next up, we have another reanimation target. It's Pathrazor of Ulamog. He's 11 CMC for a 9/9 Eldrazi with Annihilator 3. If you're not familiar with Annihilator, good for you. It's whenever this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 3 permanents. So that's just brutal. And Pathrazor of Ulamog can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Really, really mean reanimation target in any format. So good. Getting crushed by an Annihilator creature every single turn is probably one of the worst feelings in all of Magic. It's not fun. It's fun if you're the player with the Eldrazi, but that's another matter entirely. Treasure Map is a 2-cost artifact. You can pay 1, tap it, and scry 1. Put a landmark counter on Treasure Map. Then, if there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, remove these counters, transform Treasure Map, and create 3 colorless treasure artifact tokens that have the ability to tap them, sack them, and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this gives us additional card selection and turns into additional mana ramp. And then it becomes Treasure Cove, which is a land that taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can tap it, sacrifice an treasure token to draw a card. Okay, so I'm looking at this because we're hard up for card advantage, we're hard up for mana ramp. This does a little bit of both, but I don't know if it does enough of both for the 5 mana investment that we have to put into it. I'm putting this in the definitely maybe pile. So, I love these transform cards. They really knocked it out of the park, especially in Ixalan. Ring of Thune goes towards our Voltron strategy. It's a 2 colorless artifact equipment with equip cost of 1. Equipped creature has Vigilance, which we've mentioned before, the importance of Vigilance in this deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature if it's white. So we put this on Mageta the Lion, and he just does more and more and more commander damage over time. It's kind of a win more card, but it's a good card. And then classic Indestructibility, Enchantment Aura, 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a white. Enchant permanent, enchanted permanent has Indestructible. No muss, no fuss. Conqueror's Galleon is 4 CMC for 2/10 artifact vehicle. When Conqueror's Galleon attacks, exile it at the end of combat, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. It has a crew cost of 4, and it becomes Conqueror's Foothold. It is a land card that taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 2 colorless, tap it to draw a card and discard a card. You can pay 4 colorless, tap it to draw a card, or you can pay 6 colorless, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a great mana sink It gets you great value, additional card draw, and these abilities can't be countered. It's very versatile. I love the modes on this, and because we're already doing vehicle strategy with this deck, it'll fit in just fine. Deathless Angel is 6 CMC, 4 colorless, white for a 5/7 angel with flying. You can pay 2 white. Target creature is indestructible until end of turn. This is just a great way for us to throw around indestructible to anything we want. At instant speed, of course. As you should. Transform is a really cool mechanic. Chat seems to be fond of the transform cards as well. Next up, we have Bruna the Fading Light. 7 CMC, 5 colorless, white for a 5/7 legendary angel horror. When you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel or human creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. She also has flying and vigilance. So this is a reanimation spell. This is a creature. Now, the trick on this is that you have to cast it from hand. That's kind of expensive. But you're getting a lot of value. You're getting a 5/7 flying vigilance, and you're getting something back from your graveyard. So we'll put this in the definitely maybe pile. Next up, we have Dictate of Heliod. Just a great double anthem. It's 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white enchantment. As flash, creatures you control get +2/+2. I like this because not only is it a double anthem, making whatever board state we've developed even more powerful and reducing the amount of time it takes for us to kill someone with commander damage from 7 turns down to 5 turns. But on top of all that, it has flash, so we can use it as a combat trick, or we could be saving our mana for our ability to board wipe at the end of our opponent's turn. If for whatever reason at the end of the turn cycle we didn't need to board wipe, we could just play this at the end of turn and still get value. So that's pretty good. Angelic Renewal, old school card, but that's usually where you find the good cards. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white enchantment. If any creatures are put into your graveyard from play, you may destroy Angelic Renewal and put one of those creatures into play. So, you board wipe. For whatever reason, one of your creatures dies, it doesn't have indestructible, that's fine. You just kill this enchantment instead. It comes back into play. You get to enter the battlefield effects all over again. And it's untapped. Win-win-win. Okay. And, excuse me, we've got another utility card. This one I really like. It's Gyre Reach Sanitarium. It's a legendary land. It taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 2 colorless mana, and each player draws a card, then discards a card. So, can't be countered, and you get to do an additional loot effect every single turn cycle. And just like Temple Bell, you control, even though it's symmetrical, everyone gets to benefit from this. You control when it happens. It happens when it's advantageous for you, and other players may not have the ability to play that card before you do. I like my utility lands. I especially like my utility lands when they draw me cards. Speaking of utility lands, we have Sandstone Bridge. It's a land that enters the battlefield tapped. Taps for 1 white mana, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. We love vigilance in this strategy, and just getting that additional +1/+1, that's just more commander damage. That can cut, for example, when we have Dictate of Heliod in play, that can cut our opponent's clock down from 5 turns of commander damage down to 4. That's important. That's non-trivial. Probably the best mana ramp spell for any monocolor deck is Cage Sun. 6 colorless mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Obviously, in this case, we'll choose white. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+1. Great. All of our creatures will be white, with the possible exception of the Eldrazi, I guess. And whenever a land's ability adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color to your mana pool, you add an additional mana of that color to your mana pool. So it's a straight up mana doubler. Every plane's tapped for 2. That's going to get us a ton of value. It's going to make it so that we can play Mageta and activate his ability same turn. Really, really powerful card. Now, because we're going to lock down the board, we have to worry about combos. And that's why I suggest throwing in Mana Tithe. This is a white counter spell. This is during a block where they did a lot of color shifted cards. This is the color shifted equivalent of Force Spike. It's 1 white mana for an instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. People never see this coming, which is ridiculous because it's out there. But if someone's about to combo off, they tap out to put an end to the game because they're going to want out. You're dominating the board. They're going to want to put a stop to it. You go ahead and Mana Tithe it, save the game, keep doing what you do, man. These piles are getting a little unruly. Next up, we have Spirit of the Labyrinth. Spirit of the Labyrinth is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white for a 3/1 enchantment creature spirit. Each player can't draw more than 1 card each turn. This is a really good effect because what it does is when we're struggling with card advantage, it locks down our opponents so that they can't race ahead of us. And then mana ramp, we have the fixed Sol Ring. It's Worn Power Stone, 3 CMC for an artifact. It enters the battlefield tapped, and just like Sol Ring, you can tap it to add 1 or 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Sarah's Blessing. Once again, we're going old school. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white enchantment. Attacking creatures, or your creatures have vigilance. That's the new version of the text. Call of the Gatewatch. Because we're running so many Planeswalkers in this deck, this is a really good card. It's 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a white sorcery. Search your library for a Planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. It's a really good tutor. Economical, and gets us many of the most powerful cards in the deck. And finally, getting more into our reanimation package, we have Resurrection. 4 CMC, 2 colorless, white sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to play. Sun Titan, 6 CMC, 4 colorless, white for a 6/6 creature giant with vigilance. Whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Really great to get that recurring value. And on top of that, this isn't limited to just creatures. We can get lands back into play. We can get our enchantments back into play. We can get our equipment back into play. So this is probably our most powerful recurring reanimation effect. Very, very good in this deck. Stasis Snare, more removal, 3 CMC, 1 colorless, white, enchantment with flash. Very important that you can cast it at instant speed to break up combos. When Stasis Snare enters the battlefield, exile target creature and opponent controls until Stasis Snare leaves the battlefield. And then going back to our Planeswalkers, we have the OG, Gideon Jura. 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white for a Planeswalker that starts with 6 loyalty. He has a +2 ability. During your opponent's next turn, creatures that player controls attack Gideon Jura if able. He has a -2 ability. Destroy target tapped creature. Or he has a -0 ability, which is what we are really playing him for. Until end of turn, Gideon Jura becomes a 6/6 human soldier creature that's still a Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. So this guy is not indestructible, but because he does not stay a creature, we can just wait until the end of the turn cycle, or the end of turn, and do our board wipe at instant speed, and he still is not affected by it. So we get that additional 6/6 creature on the board to continue attacking alongside Mageta. This is like the God Soldiers deck. You've got Gideon, you've got Heliod, you've got Mageta, who's a general in the books. If you read the books, Mageta is barely in it. He's not nearly as cool as his card is in the books, but yeah, his card's pretty cool. So, and his flavor text is awesome. In the jungle of war, there is always a lion. Yeah, that's this deck. Next up, we have a board wipe. It kind of seems redundant because we're going to be board wiping with our general all the time. But on the off chance he's been killed a couple times, we don't quite have the mana to put him in play. Or we have to wipe, non-creature cards off the board. We have Planar Cleansing, 3 colorless, white, sorcery, destroy all non-land permanents. So yes, that would blow up our Planeswalkers, like Gideon. It would blow up our vehicles, but this is our oh crap button. There's an enchantment locking us out, there's artifacts are getting out of control, whatever the case may be. We just finally say, you know what, screw it. Blow it all up. Done. Okay. Going back to our reanimation package. I knew I had these spells in here somewhere. We have Defy Death. It's 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it's an angel, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Straight value. And let's face it, in white, almost all the really powerful creatures will be angels. So it's just going to be really good reanimation for the deck. Miraculous Recovery. 5 CMC, 4 colorless, and 1 white. Instant, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Good value. That's a good question, Dry Bomber. And frankly, you would probably want to play Hour of Revelation. So look for that in our deck tech on the YouTube channel. That's a really good option. Next up, we have Breath of Life. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white. Put target creature card from your graveyard into play. Heliod's Pilgrim is 3 CMC for a 1/2 creature, human cleric. When Heliod's Pilgrim enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Just an additional tutor effect. Sorry, I got some duplicates here. Just going to breeze by them because we've got a couple more cards here. And then we'll get to sorting this and doing our card selection. Mind Stone is 2 CMC artifact. Tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, and you have the additional versatility. You can pay 1 colorless mana, tap it, sack it, and draw a card. So it's additional mana ramp when you need it. It's card draw when you don't. Really good for mono white. Gold Myrrh is typically really good for mono white. It's 2 colorless mana for a 1/1 artifact creature. Myrrh, tap it to add 1 white to your mana pool. The downside, of course, since we plan on blowing up the board every single turn with this deck, this creature just wouldn't survive. So this is going to be probably bumped in favor of something a little more resilient, along the lines of Marble Diamond. 2 CMC artifact, enters the battlefield tapped, but you could just tap it to add a white to your mana pool. Or better yet, Mindstone's big brother, Hedron Archive. 4 CMC artifact, tap it to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can also pay 2 colorless mana, tap it, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. And then the last couple cards we have here are Armored Ascension. 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a white enchant aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each planes you control and has flying. Really good for you to put on Mageta so that you could just start racking up that commander damage. Because obviously, if we're blowing up the board every single turn and Mageta is the only thing that's surviving, he's going to get through unblocked a lot. So you want to take advantage of that and have a little bit of extra Voltron going on. Archon of Justice is a great value card for this deck. 5 CMC, 3 colorless, white, for a 4/4 flying Archon. When Archon of Justice dies, exile target permanent. So we get that exile removal, and we can ensure that he dies when we pop Mageta the Lion's Wrath of God ability every single turn. Last two I really like. We've got Grafted Exoskeleton. This card is awesome on Mageta the Lion for Voltron purposes because it's 4 colorless mana for an artifact equipment with an equip cost of 2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Infect. So he'll deal damage in poison counters. You only have to deal 10 damage at that point, which is 2 hits with Mageta the Lion. That's really short clock, especially for a control deck that locks down the board like this one. It does have a downside. Whenever Grafted Exoskeleton becomes unattached from a permanent, sacrifice that permanent. So it does make Mageta the Lion vulnerable to artifact removal. But cut the clock down from 7 turns to 2, yeah, it's worth the risk. And then lastly, basically, if you have any Gideon, run him. This is a perfect example. Gideon, Martial Paragon, 5 CMC for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Is a +2 ability. Untap all creatures you control. These creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn, which is nice. I mean, you can get that additional Voltron damage in. He has a 0 ability. Until end of turn, he becomes a 5/5 human soldier creature with indestructible. That's still a Planeswalker and prevents all damage to him, which is redundant, but whatever. And he also has an ultimate, which is -10. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Tap all creatures your opponents control, which is good for just pushing through damage. It's a great finisher. Also, Gideon of the Trials, because you're running, 4 or 5 Gideons in this deck, and you can run them all at the same time. With the recent change to the Planeswalker rules, they are now considered legendary, which means every Gideon that has a different name can exist on the board independent of other Gideons. Gideon of the Trials, get that emblem, make it so that you can't lose as long as you have a Gideon card in play. So, next up is sort of the whittling process. We're going to take these piles of cards in different categories. We're going to cut them down to the best cards following our previous formula. We're going to aim to have approximately 38 lands. We're going to aim to have approximately 10 mana ramp cards, 10 removal cards, 10 card draw cards, and then we're going to have 30 cards for our main strategy, which is going to be split between Indestructible Tribal and Reanimation. There's going to be a lot of overlay, so that's what makes this so viable. I'm going to put my commander up here for everyone to see. This card's old school, but I love it because there's so much power in having an instant speed Wrath of God that you have access to every single turn and can't be countered. Very powerful. Okay. We're going to start cleaning this up a bit. We're also going to check our mana curve before we're done. Eventually, what we're going to do is we're going to sleeve this up, turn this into, we're going to play test it for a while, polish it, and turn this into a deck tech for our YouTube channel. Check it out. We are doing another video on the Masters 25 previews. That official preview season has started today. So really exciting stuff. If you haven't heard, they are reprinting Jace the Mind Sculptor and also some really good draft cards. So when it comes to mana ramp, right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 options. We just want to whittle this down to the most consistent mana ramp. Sol Ring, Pearl Medallion. These are Sol Ring and Pearl Medallion are no-brainers. Knight of the White Orchid is a no-brainer. Surveyor Scope, Cultivator's Caravan, Core Cartographer, Caged Sun. Jeez, that's an absolute must in this deck. And then Worn Power Stone's really good. Got to put 2 more in. So right now I'm going to go with Hedron Archive and Mindstone because Orezco's Explorer will just wind up dying to our board wipe effect, and Dowsing Dagger is just a little too situational. A lot of upside though if you want to try running it in your build. And then Marble Diamond is good value. It's just a little bit too slow, and I can turn these ones into additional card draw, which is going to be so important in a deck where I have an ability. I have to discard 2 cards just to activate his ability. So I need all the card draw I can get. Okay, so that's our mana ramp package. Next up, let's look at our card draw package. Card draw package, I want to run, I might get a little excessive with this and run 10 actual card draw spells and then additional tutors. We'll see how this goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got 19 cards to choose from. That's really good for mono white. Enlightened Tutor is about as good a tutor as you could possibly get. Solemn Simulacrum pulls double duty as both mana ramp and card draw. Open the Armory is another really good tutor for the deck. Stonehewer Giant is a good tutor. Steel Shaper's Gift. Garapur Ori is just so perfect for this deck. There's no way I'm not running it. Staff of Nin is also excellent. Daredevil Dragster is potentially a maybe. Tamio's Journal is very important for this type of build. Smuggler's Copter is not actual card draw, but I'm going to throw it in here anyways because it's additional card selection. Call of the Gatewatch, really good tutor there. I'm going to cut Heliod's Pilgrim just because there's not that many auras that I'm worried about in this deck. Spirit of the Labyrinth is good in a lot of mono white decks, but because I'm just going to wind up blowing up my own creatures, I don't really think I'm going to run that one. I am, on the other hand, going to run Howling Mine, Temple Bell, Conqueror's Galleon. No, we're going to cut Conqueror's Galleon. I want to run it, but there's no guarantee I'll have the creature to crew it, especially with me blowing up my own stuff. So I'll run Seer Sundial and Jalum Tome instead. So breaking it with our typical formula of having 10 card draw spells, I'm running 5 tutors plus 10 card draw spells. Just because this deck needs the additional card draw so dang much. Next up, let's talk removal. We're going to need 10 removal spells. We are focusing on exile effects because our commander is just going to continuously blow up the board. Ideally, we want to make that happen every single turn cycle, just making it so that nothing survives. Nothing survives. If it's indestructible, though, it could be a problem. We're taking advantage of that to our own benefit, but our opponents might get that incidental benefit. So we're going to want to prioritize exile effects like Swords to Plowshares. That's just a no-brainer for every white deck. Same thing goes for Path to Exile. I also really like Grasp of Fates and Cast Out because you get that 2-3 for 1 effect with Grasp of Fate, and Cast Out can be cast at instant speed. Very versatile. I also like Unexpectedly Absent for this deck. It's not really an exile effect, but you cast this in response to someone using a tutor and get so much value out of it. It's ridiculous. I like Angel of Serenity because it's a reanimation target, potential card advantage in a pinch, and it's a 3 for 1. Either way, it's a good card. Really good for this deck. Return to Dust is a 2 for 1. Classic card. Mana Tithe, keep your opponent from comboing off. Very important in a grindy control deck like this one. I really want to include Sky Sovereign, Council Flagship, but it's hard, man. It's hard. Like, it's cool, but we should be blowing up the board anyways. So as much as I want to include it, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to be cutting a lot of these janky functional reprints of O-Ring. I will run Archon of Justice and Stasis Snare. I like Stasis Snare better than Journey to Nowhere because, yes, it costs more, but I can cast it at instant speed, and I can break up combo. So important. And I'm not going to count Mana Tithe, and I'm just going to squeeze in one more effect. debating between O-Ring, Journey to Nowhere, and Sky Sovereign Flagship. Just for the time being, I'm going to throw Journey to Nowhere in because it's just so cost effective. All right, next up, let's get to the meat of it and go into our indestructible friends. So Gideon, Martial Paragon, is best played in a Selesnya deck where you can use his ability to untap all your mana dorks. He's still really good here, being a 5 mana for a 5/5 indestructible that dodges sorcery speed removal, and on top of that, he helps push through Voltron damage. Can't argue with that. So he's still really good for this deck. Crafted Exoskeleton's a must. Armored Ascension is a definite maybe. I'm not as big on auras as I am on equipment, because obviously equipment is more resilient than an aura. But this is going to get us so much power towards commander damage. It's definitely worthy of consideration. Gideon Jorah. Sarah's Blessing is just extra vigilance. I don't know how I feel about that right now. Angelic Renewal, though, I really like, just for the ability to get cards, save cards from my own ability. Blind Obedience is an absolute must in this deck, protecting us from our opponent's haste. Heliod, God of the Suns, is an absolute must. Brave the Sands is kind of extra, so is Aether Harvester, Renegade Freighter, Revelark. Karmic Guide I should put in the reanimation pile. The Tulpa is awesome. Really should be in the reanimation targets pile, even though she's indestructible. Glory is a great value card. Angelic Overseer, Will Catcher the True. Odric should be in the Grant Indestructible pile. And then Sarah Ascended is just so much value, I can't imagine not running it. Quicksilver Amulet, Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, Elsbeth, Knight Errant, and Gideon of the Trials are all excellent, excellent choices here. What do we got? Making a mess. Making a mess. 4, 5, 6. So that's 14 of 30 cards to put towards our main strategy. I like these cards because they need little to no enabling. Like, they're just straight up good value cards. Should I put Cultivator's Caravan in the... Yep, okay. Cultivator's Caravan is great mana ramp for this strategy too. Okay. Now when it comes to our reanimation strategy, the Tulpa is great. Love it for this strategy. I also really like Sun Titan. Of course, Iona, Shield of Emeria, Avacyn, Angel of Hope. Avacyn, Angel of Hope is particularly important because she grants all of our stuff indestructible. Great reanimation target there. Emeria Shepherd, giving us landfall to reanimate. And then Ray of Dawnbringer, also really good. Reanimation effect. And let's just throw in some good reanimation spells like Marshal's Anthem, Resurrection, Defy Death, Miraculous Recovery, Breath of Life. What does that bring us to here? Yeah, that works. So that's 11. That puts us up to 25. Which means we've got room for 5 indestructible enablers and protection spells for Mageta. Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves are no-brainers. Great indestructible spell that moves around is Shielded by Faith. I also like Odric, Lunarch Marshal. Well, now it's getting tough because I want to play so many of these cards. So Hammer of Nazan is going to be my choice for now, just to have an indestructible granting equipment, one that makes it so that our other equipment can attach for free when it enters the battlefield. And assuming we have 38 lands and we're playing our commander, obviously, that means we have 61 card slots. I'm going to count this out, see how many card slots we have available. Well, that's not good. Seems like we've got a few too many cards. We're going to have to make some cuts just out here. Okay, we actually have to cut 4 cards out of this. So, must have miscounted before. That's okay. Let's do our mana curve and see what we're working with here. Maybe decide what we're going to cut based off of that. So, let's see. 3 mana spells here. Okay. 4 mana spells here. Mix up the piles there for a second. Gotta watch what I'm doing. So you always want to check your mana curve. Make sure that you have most of your cards in the 2-3 mana cost, because those cards you can play early, and you can also play in addition to another card when you play off curve. And then you also want to be able to curve out consistently every single turn. So far, I feel really good about us curving out. We've got a lot of 2 mana spells. These high cost spells, I'm just putting in a pile over here at 7. Most of these were going to be cheating into play, so I'm not too concerned about it. And all of a sudden we got a ton of 4-drops here at the end. So let's count this out. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 1-drops. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 2-drops. 8 3-drops. 18 4-drops. That's where we're going to have to make some cuts. Nine 5-drops, but Glory's technically one of them. We really don't want Glory on the board. Ideally, we just want to throw Glory into the graveyard and start activating her ability. So I'm really going to put her in the 3-drop category. 4 6-drops, and then 6 cards that are 7 and up. Those are fine because we've got so much reanimation in the deck that we should be able to pretty consistently cheat those into play. So where we have to cut is the 4-drops. And what can we cut from the 4-drops here? Well, the first thing I'm looking at is Hammer of Nazan, because granted it's an equipment that gives that grants indestructible, but it does cost 4 mana. It doesn't have indestructible like say Darksteel Plate does, or Shield of Kuldra. So I'm going to cut Hammer of Nazan first. It's a good card. It is a good card on its own right, but I'm going to cut that first. Also have to cut I'm going to cut Seer's Sundial just because it's too inconsistent. Got to cut 2 more cards, and then we'll be able to sleeve this up and play. So 2 more cards, almost certainly from the 4-drop slot. Although Archon of Justice is kind of bothering me. I think I'm going to cut Archon of Justice. It's a cute card, but it requires that I have everything online and going. So I'm going to cut that one for now. And 2-drops are super solid. I feel good about them. I feel good about the 1-drops. Even though Serra Ascended doesn't specifically speak to the strategy, it is such a good value card. I definitely am not looking to cut it. When it comes to 3-drops, I know I'm light on 3-drops, but Jaloom Tome, just getting that additional loot that I have to pay into every single turn, is probably the weakest card left in the deck. So the curve's a little bit off here, which is surprising. We don't do that a lot of... yeah, chat can relate. cutting it can be difficult because you always want to throw in those really cool extra cards. But so my mana curve's a little bit off right now. I'm a little bit heavy on the 4 spot. I'm a little bit light on the 3 spot. Otherwise, it looks like I have a good curve. I feel really good about this build. Next up, I'm going to sleeve it up and look for us to be posting a deck tech on our YouTube channel. It is Metagame Mastery. If you like what you see, feel free to give us a like, share, and subscribe. And in the meantime, that's our show for today. Peace!